Hi everyone, I'm here with Meredith today. I am super excited about her journey and all the things that she can teach us, which I'm very interested in learning because I don't know much about it. So, hi Meredith, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, my pleasure. Great to talk with you.
Awesome. So, I'm going to just start by asking you, so how old were you when you were diagnosed with cancer, and what cancer did you have?
I was, let's see, that would be in, I can't even count back. I think either 62 or 63.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
what cancer?
Breast cancer.
Right. And it was
Yeah.
it was at stage, do you remember, like, did you
I don't know. In the beginning, it probably was only 2.
okay.
But they did a biopsy and I didn't have surgery. They were going to just take it out because they said, oh, it's little, it's no big deal. We don't know that there's any lymph nodes involved, anything like that. But when she went in to do the surgery 6 weeks later, it was over 6 centimeters and it had spread into the lymph nodes, which often happens with biopsy. It's like pruning a shrub. It often makes the cancer spread and makes the tumor grow. So at that point, it was definitely further along than that.
So tell us a little bit more about what happened just before the diagnosis. How were you feeling? Was it just a normal check, or were you feeling unwell to go to the hospital, to the doctors?
No, I actually had a lump for probably 10 years and I, got it checked. And why they didn't take it out because they said, oh yeah, they do, the ultrasound and everything. And they said, yeah, it's nothing to worry about, no big deal. And I don't know if I noticed it growing. I can't remember. But I went to my doctor.
Said, like with scans and with everything. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, they said, yeah, it's not bad, but you'd think that they would have just taken it out anyway, but they didn't. And it's probably also I could have this journey. But anyway, I went to my doctor and she said, well, let's follow it up. And so I did all the things, the MRI, blah, blah, blah. And so then they went to do, yeah, the MRI came back and my doctor said, yeah, it's, positive. I guess they did a biopsy. I can't even remember. It's been so long because that was actually 10 years ago.
And then obviously when they confirmed, it is cancer, and
I guess it was after the biopsy. They did an MRI and then they did a biopsy, and it was very interesting because when they did the biopsy, well, several things. The whole thing was interesting. So my journey, as you're going to hear, is a bit different. I am an energy healer, and I was already on my path, and I was already in training, a more intense training in breathwork and to be ordained as a shamanic minister. So this was, an interesting thing. And I actually, for 2 weeks before the diagnosis and before I did this further testing, I had been in a very intense shamanic healing workshop every day for 2 weeks. And part of that was having your energy read by the people there. And one of the things that they were looking for was illness. And in talking to some of the folks later that I knew, that I was friends with, they said it did not show up energetically.
Wow.
And yeah, it was not there energetically.
2 weeks before the diagnosis.
Right. So I kind of think that the energy work I did actually shifted the energy of it, and it was kind of like almost the last stage of coming out my body. But it was there to teach me something. So I did the biopsy, and they, of course, numb you. And I was waiting in the waiting room. If any of you have ever had this experience, I was in the waiting room because they do a mammogram right after while you're still numb, because they put some kind of marker or something in there, to mark where the thing was. So I was waiting to be called in, and I swear this has not happened since. But I was sitting in the waiting room, and I'm really glad nobody else was in there because they would have thought I was nuts. But I had a vision I saw with my eyes wide open, sitting in this room, just kind of like, you know, like 2 feet or so in front of my face at eye level, I saw this black, lumpy, coal-like thing. And out of it was just rising these like wispy, smoky figures, but I could tell they were like people. And they were just kind of coming out. And at that moment, it was like this whoosh in a nanosecond of almost like my whole life passing before me, of being, you know, wife, mother, how you give and you don't even know who you are. And your whole life is based on reacting and responding to what other people need. And so you have no individual identity.
Yeah.
And then this came, I mean, in a split second. And then it passed. And I found myself saying out loud, oh my God, no wonder there's an epidemic of breast cancer. This is how women are. And it was just, it was so fast and so unexpected and so profound. I've never seen anything like that since, you know, just sitting there with my eyes open, have this thing as if it was absolutely as real as my hand is now. And so
and obviously
then,
because
you
your potentially was already open to some, you know,
yes.
yourself, because you already had been doing some of the work, right? So
yeah, I had, and this was, and I was going into this very aware. I mean, when you hear of it, you're first like shocked. But there was always this awareness because I've been doing the work for years. And it's like, okay, this is interesting. This is weird. This is curious. What do I need to know about it? What is this here to show me? So I was, you know, kind of looking at it, and even in, it was like this, it's like this split consciousness where you're experiencing it as a human, but you're also watching it from a different place. So, you know, they said, okay, you know, you need to do this stuff and have the surgery. And my doctor, who's a very conscious woman also and on the spiritual path, I love it. She's got crystals all over her office, and, you know, it's just awesome. But she gave me the name of a surgeon. So I went to see her, and she said, you know what, this is little, it hasn't spread, no big deal. We'll take it out. Maybe we'll pop you some radiation, and that'll be the end of it. So if that's all it is, this is great. So it was actually 6 weeks before I had the surgery. And by the time she went in, she came, you know, back afterwards, and she said it was well over 6 centimeters and I couldn't get it all. Oh. So we have to do the whole thing. And I said, no. I said, you're not doing it. I said, you can go back in and see if you can get more. But she took out 18 lymph nodes. And it's amazing because I have absolutely no lymphedema, none. So, you know, there was energy involved in this from the get-go.
Yeah.
But I said, well, I never did subscribe to the Western medicine path. I just had a knowing that it wasn't for me. I know that it serves other people like it did you, you know, that it worked for you, but you did it consciously.
Yeah.
I just knew that it wasn't what I was supposed to be doing, but I didn't know what else was. So I went the natural route, spent thousands with a naturopathic oncologist, you know, infusions and IVs and so many vitamins. I just wanted to puke. And vegan, and I was sick. I felt terrible. So at the end of it, he comes in, and I was getting ready to have another IV. They were putting it in. And he said, you know, I think you ought to have chemo. And I thought, you son of a bitch. To be perfectly honest, I felt so betrayed.
Was he doing some blood checks, presumably after giving all this, the IV?
I don't know. I don't know whether he was or not, actually, because this was 10 years ago, and things have changed. But I was so pissed, I left the office and I called a friend. I went to the store and bought a 6-pack of beer and a big bag of chips. And we went and sat in the hot tub, drank the whole 6-pack, which for me was a big deal. And ate potato chips. It's like, screw it. I'm done. What the hell? I either die or I don't.
I'm going to drink and eat all this frozen shit.
Right. Right. And I'm going to sit in the hot tub and I'm going to have fun. And it's like, okay, God, what's it going to be? And, you know, they wanted me to do chemo. And I thought, okay, I'm waiting to hear something because I know I'm communicating. I have friends who are energy workers, who are healers. And I actually had a friend call me. And we hadn't talked in a year. And for some reason, she got in touch with me. I said, interesting timing you have. And she said, she called to tell me about this workshop that she'd been in Florida and was coming to Arizona. And she said, I think you need to go. She didn't know I had this thing.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of support energetically from people who were tuned in and intuitive and aware. So I'm just kind of bopping along thinking, okay, you know, give me the message here, give me the message. And until then, I just got to keep going. So I contacted the healer in California that she told me about, and he said I could see you in 2 months. I said, you don't understand. They want me to do chemo now. He said, don't worry. I'll go in energetically and I'll shift the energy so that it works with you. And so on Valentine's Day in 2011, I had my one and only chemo treatment.
And there was, so you went back to your kind of conventional oncologist at the time after the naturopathic oncologist, and then they said, you know, let's do the chemo, right? Back to conventional medicine.
Right. Yeah. The surgeon referred me or something like that.
Yeah.
So I did one chemo, which was good because you know what it's like. You walk in there and, you know, there's this room full of half dead people.
It's a nice, that's a pretty accurate way to describe it. Yeah.
It's awful. Yeah. And I thought, what the hell am I doing here?
Yeah.
Because I'm healthy and vibrant and, you know, it was like, what? So my friend came with me and we did this whole prayer thing over the bag. And it was pretty shitty for, excuse my language, for a week or so. And, you know, it passed and I was down in Scottsdale near Phoenix. And I live now up in the mountains in Sedona, which is a very mystical, high energy place in the mountains. And I came up for the weekend and my friend and I were hiking. We climbed this really intense hiking trail to get to the top of this big red rock thing that's very iconic for Sedona. And it's a hard climb. So we went
you
up
did
there
that after 2 weeks of having chemo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And so then we came back and put everything in the car, got the dog and drove down to where I was staying in a condo. And I went in to get my second treatment because I still hadn't heard from the voice. Yeah. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? And so I went in and we talked about this yesterday. They take your blood and they look at it. And she came out shaking her head. And she said, we can't give it to you. She said, your immune system is destroyed. She said, you have absolutely no immunity against anything. And she said, go home, don't go anywhere, don't see anybody. Sounds like these days. You know, and if you feel the least bit like you're getting sick, go to the emergency room. She said, because you have no immunity to anything and you'll die. And she's like, in my face, you're going to die. And I swear, there must have been this divine veil that came down in front of me because it's like, I mean, she was like pronouncing this quantum curse on me. And it was like, ooh. And I looked at her and I said, really? Thank you very much. And I got up and walked out. And I'm thinking, I don't even know how I wasn't doing this. I was like,
yeah,
it just happened. It was like this thing. I just walked out. I didn't look back. I don't know what she was doing. You know, she's looking at me wondering. I walked out and on the way to the door, I finally heard the voice. And the voice said, have you got it yet?
Oh.
And it was this booming voice in my head. And I never went back. And nobody ever called me either. Which is
that's interesting.
I know.
That is really because I know in America they would be calling you, sending you letters, and
we really need to check you again and all this stuff. Nobody. So I just went to, did my energy thing. And that's when I learned about the quantum physics and healing. And it made so much sense to me. So all that stuff I learned is what I was able to work with. I stepped out of seeing the C word, because the word itself carries a frequency and it triggers all kinds of responses. So we need to watch how we use language. And so what I learned took me out of seeing this thing as a disease and seeing it as an enormous field of energy. And when I was able to pull myself out of that field, kind of like a spinning tornado, and I was kind of like, whoa, once I got out, then I could get clear and I could see it over there. I was no longer vibrating at the same frequency as this energy. And I was able to just keep modulating the fear and working through until, it just went away. I'm just not there. And I'm still not there. That was in 2011.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But what I learned propelled me into doing the healing work I do today. Because I know.
So it's almost like it sounds like, because you already, when you were doing the, the healing kind of search that you were on before cancer, it sounds like you almost had to live through yourself to understand.
Yes. In fact, I heard, and I said, when I walked away, I said to the universe, God, spirit, whatever you want to call it, I just announced it out there. Okay, what's it going to be? And it was like I drew a line in the sand. What's it going to be? And I said, I guess it was to, God or whatever. It's like, if I'm supposed to be here, you don't need that stuff to keep me here. And if I'm not supposed to be here, why put myself through it? So I said, I'm not going to do it. What's it going to be? So I had no idea whether I was going to live or not. And it was almost like I had to find out.
Yeah.
And then I heard the voice again say, you cannot teach this or do it, meaning healing sessions, unless you've staked your life on the truth of it.
Yeah.
So that's my journey. And I can look back now and honestly say I wouldn't have missed it for the world.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be who and what I am today without it.
Yeah,
So in shamanism, they call that a shamanic death and rebirth.
So did you do that course in Arizona when your friend said to you, yeah. So what was that course about?
It was a course they're no longer teaching, but it was, I walked in on the Friday night as kind of a freebie intro to get you to sign up for the whole weekend. So I went, and I'd already signed up. So I went in and he was talking about quantum physics.
Quantum physics, okay.
And how it relates to how we can use the concepts of quantum physics to shift energy and to change energy like that. Because it's all thought and intention. And I got it. I just was like, yeah, well, duh, yeah.
Yeah.
And during the course of the weekend, it was interesting. He was there, his assistant was there, and his daughter happened to be just kind of tagging along, probably because it was Scottsdale, Arizona in February, and it's great weather. So all three of them were doing work, and they call people up. And each of them called me up, so I got worked on 3 times.
Wow.
In the thing. Yeah. And it was, it just shifted everything. And it was like this veil parted, and I got the understanding of how everything is energy, everything is, and the principles of quantum physics give us a language and tools in which we have permission to go into these impossible changes, you know, make these impossible changes. One of the things I did, this is trippy. The whole thing's pretty trippy, actually. But one of the things I did was, so I kind of like went up into the quantum, and I kind of like felt back in the timeline, because in the quantum field, there is no time and no space. Everything is now. So I kind of felt around out there, and I thought, okay, where was that few moments before the first cancer cells split? It's like, oh, there you are. Oh. And I breathed it in, and I kind of created an energetic between now and that, so that I could kind of like bring forward a different timeline. Incredible. In which the cancer never happened, drop it in and live this reality now. Crazy stuff, right?
Wow, very crazy. If you were to explain, I mean, in an easy way to understand and not going too much in depth, what quantum physics is for people out there that don't know what it is.
Right. And so I do that. I have a course because I feel that that's my message. So the field, there's a field of the quantum field or the unified field. This is where the big guys are working. Because everything is energy, everything we see, everything we feel, these bodies, these pillows and chairs and the computer and everything, it's all energy. And in their laboratory experiments, they found that these particles that they would work with, they identified characteristics, and they do all this stuff, and they finally came to the fact, or the understanding, the concept in science, that the missing link on how particles behave, whether they're a particle or a wave, or it can be both at the same time. They have actually found that particles can be in more than one place at a time. From that, they deduced, because of their experiments, that the difference in how these things behave depends on how you're looking at them, the expectation you have of what they're going to do. So we're extrapolating that from the physics lab into 3D reality. So what the conclusion is, and there's tons of stuff online, people working with it. This is the new spiritual language. So there's this field out there, the unified field, and it's like this pulsating, just this fabric of particles, just kind of like hanging out there. In religious terms, you could say it's the mind of God, and it's the void of all possibility. This is where all possibility exists before it's anything. We call forth things out of it, particles. When we think a thought, when we project a thought, a desire, an idea, or a label, then it projects into this field, onto this field, because we live in it, we are it. And the particles start coalescing, and they become the thing that we have named. And that's how 3D reality is formed. And so when we can kind of like step back and unplug from the labels we've put on things and just look at it as a swirling field of energy, and we're not unplugged into it emotionally, when we're neutral to it and observing, then we can actually sort of make it go back out of what it appears to be in our mind into a possibility of it shifting and changing into something else entirely. I don't know if that was simplified enough.
So it's very simplified. So if I go back to the experiments they've done in the labs,
Mm-hmm.
So those atoms that you're talking about, were they atoms of things that I presume that were, living things, and not, like a table and a chair, and like I
Right,
said,
because these are
kilos
more
got
the
everything,
particles. Yeah.
particles, yeah.
And the term quantum itself, we to define it, because I had to look it up, and it really is looking at the basic building blocks of what we are and what reality is. So we're kind of like looking through a different lens, that the table or whatever, that when we hold in our mind that this is something I have manifested for my convenience out of a field of possibility, that it's all atoms and molecules that are holding together. But this is the mystery of living in a human body in 3D. So when we go into these expanded, altered states, and when you simply know that there's some other meaning behind how it appears. So if you can look beyond the label and how it presents to what's behind that, what called it into being, and how can I unplug and see it from a different place so that it can morph and shift and change. So on a 3D level, we talk about the law of attraction. We talk about that movie, The Secret, that came out a number of years ago.
Yeah.
And how we manifest according to our thoughts. This is actually the science behind how that works.
Yeah. Because I think when they go into that cellular level, isn't it? Like when they looked into it, there is not hardly any material things that you can touch.
There's nothing there.
Energy, exactly. Yeah. Right. And and what you're talking about at that level where a table is only a table because we're here to call it a table.
Right. We've agreed on that.
Yeah, and that that is a label that we have put it, but that is just because we are here. Like a table could have been something else if you're not here to call it a table. Kind of,
right.
Is that kind of, okay.
Yeah, and so you kind of look at everything through this sort of this a little bit of a distance. And it gives you more appreciation, and it's a little bit humorous, actually. So when I was able to first, and it wasn't easy, I'll tell you. I had a lot of support, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Of applying that to something they said. If I don't do what they said, then you're out of here. And I was choosing not to do that. So how can I change what this looks like and how it's showing up? By how I'm holding it in my consciousness. And that's what I did, not without help. But one of the things is that you have to be willing to step into it yourself. I mean, the healer doc that I still communicate with, and he's been a teacher and a mentor, a lot of people will go to him and they can't, they're well because he's shifted the energy. He has such a consciousness that he can look in, he can see the tumor, how big it is, how deep it is, and he can, because his consciousness is so strong, he can actually shrink that thing. And I had the experience with a friend of mine. She had liver tumors, and I explained to her everything I learned from this guy and had every step I went through. And she was sitting in my living room. She jumped up out of the chair and said, "Oh my God, I got it." And she went back to the doctor because they were going to do a biopsy. And they said, these things shrunk. They're half the size they were, and they're not cancer. I don't know what they are, but they're not cancer. And
like that.
I know, right? Yeah. So we start playing in the field of all possibility when we unplug our energy. And this is what I teach. I was
going to go back to that. So then obviously you did the work yourself, and then your whole life changed.
Absolutely.
So how did that change?
Well, at the time, it was really interesting because while I was going through this, it was nuts. I mean, geez, I was 63 years old. I had to move. I was renting a house up here in Sedona, and I had to move out, and I was going down to the valley to do this shamanic healing thing for 2 weeks, and I was staying with friends. He was working in San Francisco for like 3 months. He said, you know what, you may as well house it. So I had this house, and so I'm in there, and then I wasn't expecting the diagnosis. I was just going to spend the winter taking art classes down in Phoenix, where it's beautiful in the winter, at Change of Plants. So he came back, and I got a condo. So I was living in a condo, and then I moved out of that, and that's when I walked away from treatment. Then I went to North Carolina and lived with a friend in a travel trailer for a month. Then we came back here and rented a house for a few months, but had mold in it, so I had to get out. And then I went to Hawaii for a couple of weeks. And then where else I lived in 8 places in a year.
Wow.
All my stuff was in storage. Here I am, like 60-some years old. I had my dog and my car with stuff in it. I mean, it's crazy. My life was, I was a military officer's wife and a church lady. So I gave marvelous dinner parties. And
presumably put a brave face on in all of them.
No, I loved it. I mean, you know, so very polished, very, you know, schmoozing with colonels and generals and all this stuff. And then he was in upper management in aerospace defense. So again, formal balls and cocktail parties and dinner parties. That was me. And then I launched into this where I'm like bopping around couch surfing at 60-some years old with my dog while I'm going through this cancer journey and learning to do shamanic breath work and become an ordained shamanic minister. And my daughters used to call each other up and say, do you know where our mother is?
So you were not at that time, you were just by yourself, your husband was no longer with you, like? No,
the diagnosis came a year after the divorce.
Okay.
So I think it all came out, actually. I think it all came out. I'm not sure I was ever in any danger. I don't think I was, but I didn't know it, you know?
Yeah. So literally it went from like having this, you know, like safe and secured and safe.
Yes, big, beautiful house with a swimming pool and a jacuzzi and, you know, gorgeous, to, yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So now I'm here. I think we've stalled. Are you there? Uh-oh. So Angelica fell off, and I don't know if she'll come back on. So I will say, while we're waiting for her, hopefully she can come back on. I will say that I am the very, very first to acknowledge that my path is not everyone's path. That everyone needs to listen to their inner guidance. If I can offer anything, it is encouragement that there are many ways. And maybe for some, it is the natural way. For others, it is the Western medicine. But whatever you do, do it consciously. The one thing that I discovered, you know, that I did from the very beginning was when it came along, it was to say, oh, and to bow to this as a teacher. okay, here you are. And I kind of saw it as this big hairy monster, kind of a what do you call it? A Yeti kind of thing. What are you here to teach me? It's very important not to fight. You know, we hear about it's got to fight cancer. There's a very powerful principle in metaphysics, quantum physics, whatever, spiritual principles, that whatever you fight against, whatever you resist, increases in strength. And it's that way anytime. I mean, it's in martial arts. So they talk of a soft hand. So when you come against something, there's going to be a force, counter force, and it's going to push back. So you're in a battle. When you don't resist, when you go into this place of saying, okay, what am I here to learn? What do I need to support my body? So that's one of the things, you know, I was throwing all these supplements in and doing all this stuff, but it was all fighting and it was all fear-based. So when I worked with Dr. Garcia in California, that was the first thing. He taught me about going into neutrality. So you kind of unplug, and how can I observe this without being emotionally so entangled? And you may still observe that there's fear in you, but you can kind of look at that fear from that sort of like higher consciousness. Oh, yeah, look, I do have fear coming up. And you go down into your body, into your heart, into your gut, wherever that you feel it in your body, and just breathe into that place with compassion and kindness. And so you breathe into that place and you kind of go into this soft, compassionate, neutral place. It's not self-pity. It's compassion, like you'd have for anybody who is struggling and suffering. So you go into that. And then he said at the end, he said, well, you can take your supplements or not, whatever, eat whatever you know feels right to you. So the whole thing is that if you're taking supplements, to take it with the attitude of, I'm giving my body a gift of support. I'm not throwing stuff in there to make this terrible thing going away. How can I support my body? And I even did a thing, I do muscle testing, or I use my pendulum to dowse, or my crystal on my neck. And I remember feeling like I wanted to take this supplement again. And this was a little bit later. And I thought to myself, does my body need this or does my mind? And it turned out that it was my mind needed the feeling of security, that I was doing something proactive and positive. My body was okay. But that gave me information. And so I was able to, you know, I took some of it. It's like, okay, are you calmed down now? Can you relax? And so the two things to inquire, what are you here to show me that's useful and good? What is the gift in this? And to not get out of this rah-rah, fight, warrior, survival, blah, blah, blah mode, and go into curiosity, go into compassion and gentleness for yourself, kind of step into that neutral observer to the best of your ability. If you feel afraid, reach out to someone and say, can you, I'm feeling afraid right now. Can you just kind of send me some positive vibes or something like that. And then whatever supplements or what the chemo or the surgery, whatever you choose to do, whatever is your path, do it with the attitude of, I'm supporting my body. I'm giving my body this. Because for some people, they really resonate with Western medicine. And to be, you know, again, acknowledge, I was in a different place. My kids are grown on their own. No, I was no longer married. I was on my own. I could afford to take that risk. Now, if you're a young mother and you've got little kids, your choice is going to be different.
Yeah.
And you may say, you know what, I can't take this risk. I've got to do what I've got to do.
Yeah.
So honor that choice. Don't beat yourself up for it. Don't, Don't
think that's
listen
such a
to what
valid
I
point.
say.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
important.
It's so important. Absolutely so important. And I'm the first to admit it. My path was unique. I mean, that's not that other people haven't done it, but it was my path. And I knew that it was. And I know other people who have used Western medicine. It has been their awakening.
Yeah.
During their time. It's given them time to look more deeply into the emotional parts.
Yes, definitely. I think that's again another valid point. I've done a lot of inner work, which is,
Right.
I think it's people are perhaps scared to open it up, and
Right.
it's challenging and it's hard, but at the end of the day, you could be drinking all the juices and doing all the exercise, but if you're not prepared to do the inner work.
Right. Absolutely. If you don't get to the energetic core of it. So I'll tell you another thing, since I'm doing this energy healing, our bodies are like the screen of the computer. The screen of the computer doesn't have a mind of its own. It only reflects what's programmed into the computer itself. It's the same with our bodies. And so very often, and this is very much in Eastern medicine, that the body's going to tell you the inner work that you need to do. So the breast is about nurturing. It's about all this feminine stuff, all this woman stuff that's been going on, of all the subjugation and all the giving way to the patriarchy and all that story about the women. That's very much right here, because these are the symbol of our womanliness. They nurture, they feed, and we nurture everybody but ourselves. We nurture the whole world except us. So throat cancer, speaking your truth, having your voice cut off. The liver holds anger.
Yeah.
Lungs hold grief.
Mm.
Pancreas.
One was bowel. Yeah, my bowel cancer. Bowel cancer.
Well, think about it. It's getting rid of your shit. And it's getting rid of old stuff that doesn't serve you anymore.
And that's exactly what I did.
Yes. Yeah. And I think we're doing it generationally too, so that it may not have been just your stuff, but the stuff that you're carrying from lineage, the chains of the old ways, the traditions.
I totally agree. Yeah, I so agree with that. And I've read so much about that too. And I'm actually at the moment going to a healing class, which is, a little bit about, the work that you do. And I'm just starting to understand a bit more about it. Obviously talking to you now, and it's about, the teacher who has a study, not only yoga, but Western medicine and a little bit like a medium type of, kind of person who's, to access your subconscious, to start healing the layers from there.
Layers, absolutely. Layers. Yeah, for sure.
And I have had some freaky experiences as well, like just in those sessions, which was not even like a one-to-one, it was just, there was 6 people. And when this one in particular was not even the healing one, it was just it was a yoga, a restorative yoga. And when she was talking about this chakra, and she's, we were all in a position where we were looking up, and I kind of saw my grandmother, who I haven't met. And she was sitting on the bench, like further away from me. And as I'm going to say, I'm going to want to cry, but she said, I am with you. I am in you.
Wow.
I am you. And that you are cured. She kind of reassured me.
Nice.
So good. But, you've got to be open to, it wasn't, I just been to this like a month ago.
Awesome.
My cancer diagnosis was in 2018.
Oh my gosh.
I'll be the first one to.
You're good.
yeah, I've been, you know, I'll be the first one to say, you know, I am constantly looking for ways and for things that, you know, that to open myself up, you know, just so I can access, you know, that, you know, a better version of myself,
Right.
that I can improve, that I can, you know, feel that, that cured in a way, you know, physically and mentally.
Right, right, right. And shedding those layers of conditioning and programming that aren't yours.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the computer having all this junk programming in the hard drive, and then it doesn't work right. And so we're clearing that. We're calling in our higher consciousness to be the big IT person.
Yeah.
And the big computer tech, to just clear out all that old stuff, all the cookies and the viruses and all that stuff.
And rewrite the code, right? Rewrite the code.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We're all being drawn and magnetized by the essence of what we are, which is we are all expressions of the divine. And it's not out there, it's not elsewhere. We are it. The divine is expressing itself uniquely through every single one of us, even in our lousiest moments. We are that. And so there's no separation. And when we can start saying, hey, how can we work this together? Instead of saying, oh, you know, praying to God and begging God, it's like, you know what, how can I open myself to really flow through? Because we are all that. There is no separation. We can't be. There's nothing to be separate from. If this is, you know, the creator of all things, source of all that is, how can we be separate from it? It's impossible. So yeah, we're all on a journey to discover our highest self. And sometimes the ticket to get on the tour bus is not terribly pleasant.
No. So what would you say was the hardest thing on your journey, even though you were already open and you're already doing the work before being diagnosed? You know,
right.
What do you think was the hardest?
Oh gosh, it's hard to remember now because it's all kind of like receded. But it was during those days, those in-between days, before I could really know. Working through layers of fear. I had a number of visual images, but I knew somehow on some level that it was all for a purpose.
Yeah.
So it was just that staying the course. And one of the things I'll tell you I did, and I still have it in the notebook, was make myself write out a gratitude list every day.
Awesome.
And you had to sometimes like really scrape at something. Okay, what can I be grateful for right now? It was always my dog at the top of the list. And, you know, that I was living under a roof. I mean, I got really simple, really simple, really basic. But you have to like force it. That you do force is to force your mind away from this thing to gratitude. And start feeling the sensation of gratitude in your body. I'd been privileged before this happened to have been part of a group, a gratitude circle each Saturday. And the minister of the Unity Church I was going to took us in, and he had you drop into your heart. Get out of your mind into your heart and just really focus down in there. Put a hand up here if you needed to, but just really go down into this heart space. And just breathe and just feel the difference in energy between this head and this heart. And then we would talk, you know, people would say around the group something they were grateful for in the week. And what that enabled us to all do least me, was to know on a physical level what gratitude feels like.
It
Literally.
did the same for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
Yes, it's huge.
Which is a healing feeling, right? Is a healing feeling. It's just an amazing feeling.
Yeah. So when you can conjure up that feeling, and sometimes you get to a point where you know your body knows the feeling. You know, they talk about muscle memory. This is like, I don't know what, energy memory or something.
Yeah.
But it's almost like you don't need the list anymore to be able to connect with that feeling in your body. And because what we put out there comes back, when we put out fear, it magnetizes things to be afraid of. When we put out gratitude, it magnetizes back to us more things to be grateful for. So that's huge. That was probably the biggest thing that, you know, it's like, I am doing this.
Yeah.
And having people around me to support me in my choice. And I have to say, my daughters were amazing. They were frightened, but somehow they knew that I was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And they supported me in my choice. They didn't say, oh, Mom, you need to.
Which is hard, right, for them, it must have been hard for them, because we are conditioned to feel that much fear that we, you know, even outside of that, you know, you don't think that it's possible unless you do what everybody else has done it.
Yeah, it's true. In fact, I talked to my ex at the time. We talked on the phone after he heard. And he said, so of course you're going to do everything the doctors tell you. And he said, no, I know you're not. Never mind. So even he understood that I wasn't going to do it.
Yeah, do it.
But God, I was going to say something. Maybe it'll come back, because I thought.
So you kind of changed the course of your life, and obviously you start your healing work. And you mentioned you've got a course. So what is the course, and what do you teach on your course?
Well, I have a couple. One, I'm getting ready to start. So I mentioned that I was training in breath work. That's the main vehicle I use in sessions with people. And in that breathwork journey that they take, I'm actually doing this healing. And then, and so I've certified 6 people already, and I'm getting ready to offer a new group to learn how to hold a space. And I incorporate some of the spiritual physics into that teaching, because it's so foundational for opening the client to a really big space of healing. So they're not just lying there breathing, you know, and whatever.
Unconsciously, right? They are actually consciously,
Right. They are shifting energy on a multidimensional level, and they don't realize it, except that they feel so much. So I'm starting that next month, and I'm going to do 8 webinar sessions to teach the foundations. And I want to have a retreat in Sedona in June. May end up being a virtual retreat, depending on how things go.
Yeah.
You actually do, you know, hands-on breath work. You kind of like need the practice, but we'll see what we can do. But once I get that kind of worked on, I want to set up another. I've done a couple of rounds of Discover Your Quantum Self, where I go really deep into all this quantum, not the quantum physics, mathematics, difficult stuff. It's more like, how do we use this as a spiritual language, and how can we have tools to incorporate this and shift our own energy every moment of every day? So it's very, very practical, and it's, oh my God, the lives it's changed is unbelievable. And my daughter's one of them, which is makes me very proud. So I'm going to start that, is to really give people an understanding of how to work in this expanded sense of reality. Because that's the first thing I do, is change their view of reality what reality actually is. And then tools to how to work with that, to change their lives, change their health, change their body, reverse aging. See, that's part of my
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, you look amazing. So how do you like physically feel now? Like what, you know, like physically, mentally, like after obviously, you know, I know it was a long time ago, but you know, how do you, what's your life? What does your life look like now?
Well, so much is spent doing healing sessions for people. And so you stay on this path, but there's a sense of connection to my higher essence, my soul, my higher self, my I am, depending on what language you like to use. I am not separate from these higher aspects of me. I'm like, I'm like the astronaut in the spacesuit that goes outside the vehicle in the clunky suit and does things out there. And that's me. But the astronaut's got this big room full of nerdy people sitting at computers, totally connected. They know everything. They monitor heart rate, blood pressure, everything that they're doing. And in connection, they're not separate. We're like that. We are in the clunky earth suit out there navigating stuff. And we've got this whole field in the higher realms that we don't reach with our five senses. It's beyond the five senses, in a higher dimensional frequency vibration that knows exactly where we are and what we're doing. When we know that, and when we say, okay, well then, let's do this together. How can I open up to more knowing that I'm connected? And so that's the place from which I live my life. I discuss everything. I make my needs known. I ask questions like, what do I need to know about that? Well, that's weird. So it's this living in an expanded reality. It's almost like 3D has become a bit of a joke. We have to navigate it, but if we bring in higher knowing, we navigate it differently. And that's my life. And then people come to do a session with me, and I really just surrender myself to be a conduit for what they need to have come through. And everything, I don't know, everything just becomes rather magical, even in times where I feel contracted, stressed, confused, because we're always peeling more layers, always. It's just that you get more tools, and you don't get quite as thrown for a loop by them.
And you know, you got to this stage now that you can get to that place really quickly. So if you're doing a one-to-one session, it doesn't matter, you know, what you're feeling at that particular moment, you as a person, but you can just get to that place and help to connect with that person's needs.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
And is that what your second course? So one is, so did you say the breath work, and the other one is the quantum self?
Quantum self. Right. Yeah. And I don't know when that's going to start yet. Probably either late April or early May.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So if you were to meet somebody today who was diagnosed with breast cancer, what would you say to them?
Well, first of all, you'd have to kind of listen to them and where they are. You know, kind of get a sense of their perspective on things, and you have to speak to them where they are. So I would gently try to assist them in looking at it from a higher place. I would certainly have compassion for their fear and insecurity. And possibly a lot of what I do would be simply to hold a secure space and I, you know, depending on what they say and all this stuff, if they're going to the doctor, oh, I know what it was that I wanted to remember. Going, you know, talking with the surgeon, talking with the oncologist, they're so nice and they're so kind, and they say, you know, it's okay, we'll take care of you. Meanwhile, they're pumping you full of poison, or, you know, butchering your body, because that's that's the only tools they have. And sitting across the desk, there is so much fear coming at you. You have to do this or else. So recognizing that they're caught up in that field of energy and they're vibrating at that frequency. So being able to protect yourself, and I felt myself, it's like it pulls you. It
completely
sucks you in.
Yeah.
I had a vision once, and it was so real. Oh my God. And it was like I was here, I was me, and there was this hand, and it was like life-size hand, but it was a vision. And it was like I was being flushed down a toilet. So this is this vortex, and I was being pulled down. And I remember looking up at my hand saying, help, it's too strong. I can't pull myself out by myself.
Yeah.
The energy of the field of cancer is extremely powerful, and you can't get out by yourself. You have to have help. It's just too much.
It's too much,
so, you know, talking with someone who's newly diagnosed or whatever, I would try to make them aware of that and assist them in supporting them in looking at it in a different way.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, since then, here's my mantra, and I've used it. Nothing happens to me. Everything happens for me.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's real hard to stand by, because you're like, God damn it.
Yeah.
Happening for me.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
You gotta stick it. It's like, this is happening for me, and I'm gonna see how it is.
Yeah, trust the process.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. That is, thank you so much for all the all the lessons. You know, there's so much I think you know, people can take out of this interview and your experience. I would love to put your website or the information from your course on the on the description below, and when you do have your next course ready, we can also add that on, and or some sort of contact email address that people can contact you on, because I think that we don't get told that we have options when you have cancer. There is only one path.
That's right.
And that is pretty powerless, and that makes you feel that that you can't do anything. And I believe strongly that there is a lot you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And to just give that support.
Awesome.
In that space with a person. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
That's been amazing.
Yeah. Okay.